The original Star Trek series wasn't just a groundbreaking sci-fi show, it was a cultural phenomenon that introduced audiences to a future of hope, exploration, and unforgettable characters. Decades later, many of the actors who brought these iconic roles to life have sadly passed away, some under tragic circumstances. From the legendary crew of the USS Enterprise to memorable guest stars, their contributions to the Star Trek universe remain timeless. In this tribute, we look back at 40 actors from Star Trek, 1966 to 1969, who have tragically died, remembering their careers and lasting impact on one of the most beloved franchises in television history. Leonard Nimoy portrayed the half-Vulcan, half-human Mr. Spock in Star Trek, 1966, at the age of 35, crafting one of television's most enduring characters. Spock's inner conflict between logic and emotion captivated audiences, yet Nimoy's personal struggles were far more devastating. Typecast and unable to escape Spock's shadow, he fell into alcoholism and self-destructive habits, leading to the breakdown of his 32-year marriage to Sandra Zober, who reportedly learned of their divorce when he left their home on her birthday. His relationship with his children, especially his son Adam, was distant and troubled. Despite quitting smoking decades earlier, Nimoy developed COPD, a disease that left him gasping for breath, robbing him of his strength. In his final days, he expressed deep regret over his choices, writing a heartbreaking farewell to fans on Twitter, "A life is like a garden. Perfect moments can be had, but not preserved, except in memory." He died on February 27, 2015, at the age of 83.
Yes, sir. Planet continued to shrink in mass. Mr. Spock?
All scanning stations manned, all recorders functioning, Captain.
Nichelle Nichols brought Lieutenant Uhura to life in 1966 at the age of 34, becoming a symbol of progress as one of the first black women in a major television role. While her portrayal inspired generations, Nichols struggled behind the scenes. She considered leaving Star Trek due to the lack of meaningful storylines, but was convinced to stay by Martin Luther King Jr., who saw her as a trailblazer. Post-Star Trek, she faced Hollywood's racial barriers, her career never reaching the heights it deserved. Her love life was equally troubled. Her first marriage to Foster Johnson was brief, and her second to Duke Mondi ended in divorce. In her later years, dementia left her vulnerable to manipulation, leading to a heartbreaking conservatorship battle between her son and a former manager. Once an icon of strength, she spent her last years isolated and powerless, her voice silenced. She passed away on July 30, 2022, at the age of 89, her final years overshadowed by exploitation and loss of autonomy.
And devil eyes could rip your heart from you. At first his look could hit.
Teri Garr portrayed Roberta Lincoln in Star Trek in 1968 at the age of 24, bringing charm and wit to the role of the young, resourceful secretary unwittingly caught up in a time-traveling adventure. Though her appearance in Star Trek was brief, it showcased her comedic timing and undeniable screen presence. Garr went on to have a successful career, starring in films like Young Frankenstein, 1974, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, 1977, and Tootsie, 1982, for which she received an Academy Award nomination. However, behind the scenes, Garr struggled with health issues that would later define her later years. In the 1990s, she began experiencing symptoms of multiple sclerosis, a diagnosis she publicly confirmed in 2002. The illness gradually took its toll, affecting her mobility and forcing her to step away from acting. Despite her struggles, she remained an advocate for MS awareness, using her platform to educate others about the disease. In December 2019, Garr suffered a life-threatening medical emergency when she was rushed to the hospital following a brain aneurysm. Though she survived, her health continued to decline in the following years. She passed away peacefully at the age of 79, leaving behind a legacy of memorable performances, but also a life marked by resilience in the face of personal adversity.
Oh, the subway got stalled.
Where have you been for the past 3 days?
Now, wait a minute. Why should I tell you?
DeForest Kelley stepped into the role of Dr. Leonard Bones McCoy in 1966 at the age of 46, delivering the gruff but warm-hearted doctor who often clashed with Spock. Despite his fame on Star Trek, his acting career faltered afterward, with only a few minor roles keeping him afloat. Kelley had no children, and though he remained married to Carolyn Dowling for over 50 years, their life became increasingly reclusive as his health declined. Financially constrained, he relied on convention appearances to sustain himself. His final years were marked by suffering, as stomach cancer slowly consumed him, leaving him frail and in constant pain. Carolyn, in poor health herself, struggled to care for him. As death approached, Kelley became a shadow of his former self, his once commanding voice reduced to a whisper. He died on June 11, 1999, at the age of 79, in a hospital bed, far from the stars he once traversed.
Wonder why Jim didn't tell me he found you.
I'm so happy to see you, Leonard. The others, I don't relate to them as much.
James Doohan became the beloved Montgomery Scotty Scott in Star Trek, 1966, at the age of 46, his Scottish brogue and technical wizardry making him a fan favorite. Before his acting career, he was a war hero, storming the beaches of Normandy on D-Day and being shot 6 times, leaving him with a permanently injured hand that he hid on screen. Despite his popularity, Star Trek typecast him, limiting his career options. He was married 3 times, fathering 7 children but often struggling to balance his personal and professional lives. In his final years, his health rapidly deteriorated. Parkinson's, diabetes, and Alzheimer's ravaged his mind and body. By the time of his death on July 20, 2005, at the age of 85, he no longer recognized his loved ones. His ashes were later sent into space, granting him the celestial journey his character had so often dreamed of, but in life, his final years were marked by suffering and loss.
Are you all right, Captain?
All right, just a little dizzy.
Here, let me give you a hand.
I can't get through there.
Nothing serious.
Eddie Paskey played Lieutenant Leslie in Star Trek, 1966, at the age of 27, becoming a recurring background presence on the Enterprise bridge. Though not a lead, he was a recognizable face, appearing in nearly 60 episodes. However, his acting career was tragically cut short. Severe migraines caused by studio lights forced him to retire from acting early, derailing his Hollywood ambitions. Without steady work, he shifted to the auto repair business, far removed from the glamorous world of television. Though he remained married to his wife Judy, financial struggles and health issues loomed over his later years. Despite being a part of Star Trek history, he was often overlooked, his contributions largely forgotten. He passed away on August 17, 2021, just before his 82nd birthday, his death barely making headlines. A quiet and unrecognized end for a man who had once stood among the stars.
Nothing yet, sir.
Grace Lee Whitney portrayed Yeoman Janice Rand in Star Trek, 1966, at 36, embodying a loyal and efficient officer whose deep admiration for Captain Kirk remained unspoken. Her time on the series was abruptly cut short when she was fired after only 8 episodes, sending her life into a downward spiral. In later years, she revealed that she had been sexually assaulted by a high-ranking executive, a trauma that led to a devastating battle with alcoholism and depression. The loss of her job, combined with the assault, destroyed her confidence and left her struggling to find work. She drifted between failed marriages, homelessness, and addiction, often living in the shadows of the Hollywood machine that had discarded her. Though she eventually found solace in Star Trek conventions and overcame her addiction, she never fully escaped the pain of her past. She died on May 1, 2015, at 85. Vic Perrin played the Metron in Star Trek, 1966, at 50, a powerful yet detached alien being who judged the violent tendencies of others. A prolific voice actor, Perrin lent his talent to many projects, yet his career remained one of anonymity. His voice was everywhere, yet his name was rarely acknowledged. He longed for on-screen roles, but his distinct vocal abilities kept him confined to the recording booth, a fate that left him feeling unfulfilled. His personal life was equally lonely. His marriage deteriorated over time, and he spent his later years without the deep personal connections he craved. As he battled cancer, he faced his mortality with the bitter knowledge that he had never truly received the recognition he had yearned for. He died on July 4, 1989, at 73, leaving behind a legacy of forgotten contributions, his voice an echo in an industry that had already moved on.
The Halcyon Council cannot permit your Federation to mine dilithium crystals on our planet.
We have shown the Council historical proof that our missions are peaceful.
We accept.
Majel Barrett played Nurse Christine Chapel in Star Trek, 1966, at 34, a kind and devoted officer whose love for Spock remained unreturned. Despite her deep connection to Star Trek, her career never reached the heights she desired, as Hollywood often saw her only as Gene Roddenberry's wife. Their marriage was fraught with infidelity, as Roddenberry engaged in numerous affairs, leaving Majel in a constant battle between love and betrayal. Though she remained by his side, she sacrificed much of her own identity to uphold his legacy. Professionally, she struggled with being typecast, unable to secure meaningful roles outside of Star Trek. In her later years, as she battled leukemia, she was left to reflect on a life spent in the shadow of a man she both loved and resented. She died on December 18, 2008, at 76, her final days spent preserving a vision that had overshadowed her own dreams.
I know how you feel. You hide it, but you do have feeling.
Malachi Throne played Commodore Jose Mendez in Star Trek in 1966 at the age of 38, portraying a no-nonsense Starfleet officer devoted to duty. A talented character actor, he appeared in Batman, Mission, Impossible, and The $6 Million Man, yet he was often overshadowed by bigger stars. Hollywood's relentless typecasting left him struggling for meaningful roles, forcing him to accept work far beneath his talents. His marriage to Judith Marion suffered under the weight of his career obsession, and though they had 2 sons, his frequent absences created an emotional distance he never repaired. As he aged, he faced financial insecurity, constantly taking minor roles just to sustain himself. A lifelong smoker, he developed lung cancer, which slowly robbed him of his deep, commanding voice. On March 13, 2013, he died at the age of 84, his final years marked by declining health and the quiet despair of an actor never fully appreciated in his time.
His mind is as active as yours and mine, but it's trapped inside a useless vegetating body. He's kept alive mechanically.
John Lormer played Dr. Theodore Haskins in Star Trek in 1966 at the age of 60, portraying a wise and inquisitive scientist devoted to exploration and discovery. His acting career spanned decades, with roles in The Twilight Zone, Bonanza, and Perry Mason, yet he was always a background presence, never achieving the fame he had once dreamed of. His personal life was equally tragic. His marriage ended in divorce, and he became estranged from his only son, a rift that would never heal. As Hollywood moved on, so did the industry's interest in him, leaving him with fewer and fewer opportunities. In his later years, he withdrew from public life, living in near solitude, haunted by regret and forgotten by many of his former colleagues. He died on March 19, 1986, at the age of 79, officially from natural causes, but those who knew him believed that a lifetime of disappointment and isolation had contributed to his slow, quiet decline.
Lawgivers should know.
Surely, Hakem, they already know. Are they not infallible?
You mock them. You mock the lawgivers. And the strangers on...
Mark Leonard took on the role of the Romulan commander in Star Trek, 1966, at the age of 42, later portraying Spock's Vulcan father, Sarek. His Romulan character was a rare adversary, noble, strategic, and bound by duty rather than cruelty. Leonard, a classically trained actor, found himself perpetually typecast in sci-fi roles, struggling to escape the shadow of Star Trek. Though he appeared in respected projects, true stardom eluded him. His personal life was marked by quiet sorrow. His marriage to an Homeier endured, but his relentless pursuit of work often left him emotionally distant. They had 2 daughters, but his commitment to acting strained their relationships. As he aged, financial instability plagued him, forcing him to take on minor roles in his later years. His final years were consumed by illness, his body ravaged by multiple myeloma, a cancer that drained him of strength. He passed away on November 22, 1996, at the age of 72.
Cloaking system answer.
It is good we approach the neutral zone.
Ted Cassidy played Balok's puppet in Star Trek in 1966 at the age of 34, his towering presence and deep voice creating an eerie and menacing figure. Best known as Lurch in the Addams Family, he became synonymous with playing imposing, monstrous characters, a fate that frustrated him as he longed for more diverse, serious roles. Despite his talent, Hollywood only saw his physicality, leading him to be typecast repeatedly. His personal life suffered as well. His marriage to Margaret Helen Jesse ended in divorce, as his growing dissatisfaction with his career made him increasingly distant. Suffering from acromegaly, he faced numerous health complications, and by the late 1970s, his condition worsened significantly. In 1978, he underwent heart surgery in hopes of improving his failing health, but complications arose. On January 16, 1979, he died at just 46, his dreams of breaking free from typecasting forever unfulfilled, his deep, resonant voice silenced far too soon.
Captain Kirk! Where are you?
William Campbell became the cunning Klingon Koloth in Star Trek, 1967, at the age of 44, bringing charm and arrogance to a role that made him a fan favorite. Despite his commanding presence, Campbell never found lasting success outside of Star Trek, his career stagnating in minor roles and guest appearances. His personal life was equally rocky. His first marriage to Judith Campbell Exner ended in divorce, with rumors swirling about her alleged affairs with President John F. Kennedy and mob boss Sam Giancana. He later married Teresa Campbell, but their life was far from glamorous. As Hollywood moved on without him, Campbell withdrew, his final years marred by loneliness and declining health. Suffering from the indignities of aging, he faded into obscurity, his once powerful voice silenced by time. He died on April 28, 2011, at the age of 87, his passing barely noted in an industry that had long forgotten him.
Who put the tribbles in the quadro triticale? What was in the grain that killed them?
Captain Kirk, before you go on, may I make a request?
Skip Homeier played the ruthless and ambitious Melicon in Star Trek, 1968, at the age of 38, bringing a chilling, power-hungry character to life. Off-screen, Homeier's career was marred by the weight of early stardom that never materialized into lasting success. As a young actor, he was often cast in villainous roles, but his ability to break into leading roles proved elusive. His personal life, marked by 2 marriages, suffered under the strain of his inability to find steady work. Both marriages ended in divorce, and he was left with few lasting connections. Financial instability and career struggles weighed heavily on him in his later years, leaving him to retreat from the spotlight. Suffering from spinal myelopathy, a debilitating disease that gradually stole his mobility, Homeier found his later years increasingly painful and isolating. He died on June 25, 2017, at the age of 86, largely forgotten by the industry.
They're finished in sickbay. See to it that they're escorted back to their proper quarters and given whatever care they need.
Yes, Captain. We respectfully request that you take us.
Morgan Woodward portrayed Captain Tracy in Star Trek, 1966, at the age of 41, playing a morally complex character whose desperation and survival instincts led him to make extreme decisions. While Woodward appeared in many films and television series throughout his career, his time in the spotlight was short-lived, and the accolades he had hoped for remained just out of reach. His personal life was a mixture of solitude and disappointment, Though never married, Woodward's focus on his career left little room for romantic relationships. His later years were dominated by poor health, his vision failing as he grew older, leaving him to rely heavily on others. By the time of his death, Woodward had become a shadow of the actor he once was, struggling with the challenges of aging and diminishing public recognition. He died on February 22, 2019, at the age of 93, his passing marked by little fanfare, the life he had dedicated to acting slipping quietly into history without the fanfare he had longed for.
Affected as they were. As you are. But I stayed alive because I stayed down here.
Roger C. Carmel played Harry Mudd in Star Trek in 1966 at the age of 34, portraying a charismatic and mischievous con artist who frequently tangled with Captain Kirk and his crew. His performance was beloved, and he found further success in television, lending his voice to the Transformers and appearing in Batman and the Man from UNCLE. However, beneath the charm and humor of his roles, his real life was marked by personal demons. He never married and led a life of indulgence, his struggles with substance abuse becoming more evident as the years went on. His addiction eventually cost him job opportunities and strained his friendships, leading to financial difficulties. Isolated and battling declining health, his career faded into near obscurity. On November 11, 1986, he died at the age of 54 from hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, his once vibrant presence extinguished by years of excess, leaving behind a legacy of both brilliance and tragedy.
I apologize for what he said, sir. He's so used to buying and selling people.
I'll handle the conversation.
Lawrence Montaigne, who portrayed the loyal Romulan officer Decius in Star Trek 1966 at the age of 35, was an actor of significant skill, but his career never reached the heights he had hoped for. After his role in Star Trek, Montaigne's career was filled with minor roles in television and film, and despite his talent, he struggled to find consistent work in Hollywood. His personal life was also marked by challenges. Although he was married, the pressures of his career and the instability of the entertainment industry led to a strained relationship. The toll of years spent in roles that never garnered the recognition he sought weighed heavily on him. In his later years, Montaigne found himself wrestling with health issues, his declining condition exacerbated by the emotional and financial strain of his earlier years. He died on March 17, 2017, at the age of 86, having been largely forgotten by the industry that had once offered him so much.
A message was dispatched. You've broken the rule of silence.
Only in code, Commander. To inform our praetor.
Stewart Moss, who portrayed Henner in Star Trek 1966, began the role at the age of 29, playing a cold and calculating alien who gradually adapts to human form. Moss showed early promise with his engaging performances, but his career soon fell into obscurity. Despite the fame his Star Trek role could have offered, Moss struggled to secure significant roles thereafter. His career was marked by a series of underwhelming projects that never allowed him to reach his full potential. Moss's personal life mirrored his career struggles. His marriage to actress Carolyn Moss ended in a bitter divorce, which took a toll on his emotional well-being. His children grew distant, and Moss often spoke of feeling isolated. In his later years, his health began to deteriorate, culminating in a fatal heart attack. Moss passed away on September 13, 2017, at the age of 79, leaving behind a life filled with missed opportunities and personal heartbreak.
Until they die. What are we doing out here in space? Good? What good? We're polluting it, destroying it.
Ian Wolfe, who portrayed Mr. Ataz in Star Trek 1968, began his role at the age of 72, playing the meticulous and eccentric librarian of the Atavachron. Although Wolfe had a long career in theater and television, his work often involved smaller, more forgettable parts. While he received some acclaim for his performances, particularly in the realm of Shakespearean theater, Wolfe never experienced the recognition he hoped for in Hollywood. His personal life was marred by tragedy, as his wife passed away at an early age, leaving him to raise their children alone. Wolfe's relationship with his children grew strained as they followed their own paths, and in his later years, he found himself increasingly isolated. As an older man, his career suffered from ageism, and he struggled to find meaningful roles. Wolfe died on January 23, 1992, at 95, quietly slipping away after a life filled with unrealized potential and emotional hardships.
That. I don't trust you.
Which one are you now, the replica or the real one?
I'm the real Atos. You've done away with my replicas. I regret what I must now do.
Bruce Hyde, who portrayed Lieutenant Kevin Riley in Star Trek 1966, began the role at 25, bringing a spirited and youthful energy to the series. While his performance was well received, Hyde's career quickly stagnated after his time on the show. Although he had several other roles in television, none were as significant as his Star Trek appearance. Despite his talent, Hyde struggled to find substantial work, and his dreams of a successful career were dashed. His personal life was similarly turbulent, marked by a difficult marriage and the subsequent breakdown of his relationships. Hyde's later years were overshadowed by his battle with throat cancer, which severely affected both his health and his career. He passed away on October 13, 2015, at the age of 74, leaving behind a legacy of unfulfilled promise and personal pain. Hyde's untimely death from cancer marked the end of a life spent struggling against both health and career obstacles.
Emergency! Rec room area 39. We need medics!
Morgan Farley played Hackham in Star Trek in 1967 at the age of 69, portraying a wise and courageous leader who fought against the oppressive Landru. His role, though impactful in its own right, was overshadowed by a career filled with minor roles that never brought him the acclaim he deserved. Farley had a difficult personal life, he married late in life, and his family relationships were strained. His children distanced themselves due to his emotionally detached nature, which was exacerbated by his struggle with a fading career. His later years were marked by loneliness, compounded by financial difficulties and emotional isolation. Despite his age, Farley remained proud of his work but struggled to find joy in his achievements. He passed away on October 11, 1988, at the age of 90 from natural causes, his death almost unnoticed by the public. He had lived a long life, but one that had not been as fulfilled as he had hoped, with little recognition for his contributions to the entertainment world.
His face, his eyes, his ears. Do the Yang legends describe the servant of the evil one?
Elizabeth Rogers, who played Lieutenant Palmer in Star Trek 1967, began her role at 33, portraying a calm and competent communications officer. Despite her promising start, Rogers' career never took off as hoped. After her time on Star Trek, she struggled to find significant roles, often relegated to minor television parts. Her career suffered from lack of opportunity, and she found herself facing a string of personal and professional setbacks. Her personal life was filled with emotional turmoil, including 2 failed marriages that left her emotionally scarred. The stress of her personal life and career took a toll on her health, and she was eventually diagnosed with lung cancer, which spread to her body. Rogers' health continued to deteriorate, and she passed away on November 6, 2004, at 70, leaving behind a legacy of unfulfilled potential, personal sorrow, and an early life marked by hardship.
Herbert!
Lieutenant Palmer, notify Starbase we have the 6 aboard who stole the space cruiser Aurora. Regrettably, the space cruiser itself.
Booker Bradshaw played Dr. Mbenga in Star Trek in 1968 at the age of 28, portraying a calm and compassionate medical officer with expertise in Vulcan physiology. Despite his acting talent, Bradshaw struggled to gain meaningful roles in Hollywood after Star Trek, often relegated to minor parts that failed to advance his career. His personal life mirrored his professional frustrations. Bradshaw went through multiple failed marriages, with his relationships suffering due to his emotional distance and professional dissatisfaction. His financial struggles and the emotional toll of his career led to a life filled with regret, and as his career stagnated, so did his personal happiness. Bradshaw died on April 1, 2003, at the age of 62 from a heart attack, a tragic end for an actor whose potential had been largely unfulfilled, and whose passing was largely overshadowed by the loss of other notable actors in his field.
We've no replacements for the damaged organ, sir. If he's going to live, his
Gene Dynarski played Ben Childress in Star Trek in 1966 at the age of 33, portraying a rugged, determined miner. Dynarski had a prolific career, but it was largely defined by roles that failed to gain him significant recognition. His career was marked by an inability to land leading roles, and he found himself often cast in supporting parts. Personal challenges followed him, including multiple failed marriages and strained relationships with his children. As Dynarski's career stalled, his finances took a hit, and he struggled with feelings of resentment and missed opportunities. His health began to decline in his later years, and he experienced an increasing sense of disillusionment. Dynarski passed away on February 27, 2020, at the age of 86 from a heart attack. His death, though peaceful, came after a life filled with personal and professional hardships, and he passed away without the recognition he deserved for his years of work in the entertainment industry.
Like them. We'd like to have a look at them first, of course.
Right. Trot him out, Captain. Oh, and Harry Mudd. Either way, I've agreed to have him released.
Barbara Baldwin portrayed Angela Martine in Star Trek 1966 at 28, a young officer whose Starfleet career was marked by personal tragedy, including the loss of her fiancé on their wedding day. Off-screen, her own life mirrored this sense of unfulfilled promise. Despite her early television roles, her career never took off as she had hoped. Relegated to minor and often uncredited appearances, she struggled to make a name for herself in Hollywood. Financial instability plagued her, and her personal life suffered as well. Her marriage, strained by her career disappointments, ended in quiet separation. She lived much of her later life in obscurity, rarely recognized for her contributions to Star Trek, a series that had moved on without her. In her final years, congestive heart failure slowly weakened her, and she passed away on March 31, 2024, at 85, her name lost to time, remembered only by the most dedicated fans of a show that had once given her fleeting hope. Byron Morrow portrayed Admiral Kamak in Star Trek in 1967 at the age of 56, a role that demanded a stern, commanding presence. Though Morrow was an accomplished actor, his career was often defined by small, unremarkable roles, leaving him with a sense of frustration over missed opportunities. His personal life was no less tumultuous. Morrow's marriage ended in divorce after many years, and his strained relationship with his children only deepened as his professional and personal struggles weighed heavily on him. Despite his long career, he often felt overshadowed by other actors and struggled with feelings of inadequacy. In his later years, he faced depression, and his health began to decline. He passed away on May 11, 2006, at the age of 94 from natural causes, having lived a long life but without the lasting recognition he had hoped for, dying with his greatest achievements largely behind him and his later years marked by a sense of loneliness. Richard Durr, who played Admiral Fitzgerald in Star Trek 1967, began his role at 50, bringing a commanding presence to the series. Though Durr had a long career, he never achieved the fame he had hoped for. His roles were mostly limited to supporting characters, and his career lacked the opportunities for leading roles that many of his peers enjoyed. Durr's personal life was fraught with difficulties, including multiple failed marriages and strained relationships with his children. His attempts to maintain a fulfilling personal life were hindered by his career and emotional struggles. In his later years, Durr faced a devastating diagnosis of pancreatic cancer, which cast a long shadow over his final years. He passed away on May 8, 1992, at the age of 74, after a long and painful battle with the disease. His death was a tragic end to a life marked by unrealized potential and emotional turmoil. Michael Zaslow played Crewman Darnell in Star Trek in 1966 at the age of 24, marking his career with the tragic fate of being the first crew member to die on the show. Zaslow's life, like his character, was defined by a short and painful trajectory. While his early career showed promise, he struggled to secure major roles after Star Trek, and his career faltered as he became typecast in smaller parts. His personal life suffered as well, with a failed marriage and growing difficulties in his relationships. Zaslow's health began to decline when he was diagnosed with amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, ALS, a devastating illness that robbed him of both his career and his physical abilities. The diagnosis was a cruel irony for an actor who had so much more to give. Zaslow passed away on December 6, 1998, at the age of 56 from ALS, a bitter end to a life full of unfulfilled promise. Who is your favorite character in Star Trek? How do you feel knowing that the actors have passed away? Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you don't miss future videos. Thank you so much.